Hello and welcome back to Pro Tour Magic Origins. I'm Tim Willoughby here with Ian Duke, and we are getting ready for round 12 here at this Pro Tour. We're back in Standard, and there are some very exciting decks still right at the top of the heap. We're going to get a chance to see, for my money, possibly the most exciting deck in the room.
I can't wait to see this one.
Yeah, we have Antonio Del Moral Leon, Pro Tour winner. He's already heading to the World Championship at the end of the month. He's up against Raphael Levy. Let's go down to the feature match area and check it out. Hello and welcome to round 12 of Pro Tour Magic Origins. I'm Tim Willoughby here with Ian Duke, and in the feature match area we have some very exciting decks for you. First up we can see there Hall of Famer Raphael Levy, just one of the most devastatingly consistent players on the Pro Tour today, with more Pro Tour experience than just about anyone. He's playing Green-Red Devotion, a deck that an awful lot of players were playing, but look at this. Antonio Del Moral Leon, he won a Pro Tour and he's back with a deck that I think it's just him with. Green-Black Demonic Pact. Very exciting deck.
Yeah, this is super cool. Demonic Pact, of course, one of the brand new cards from Origins. This enchantment where you get basically 4 different effects over 4 different turns. 3 of them very powerful. The 4th one is you lose the game.
Yeah, we don't want that one.
We don't want that one to happen. So the game with this card is to figure out how to leverage the advantage from those first 3 abilities without running into that 4th one.
Yeah, and it seems like Del Moral Leon is the one that's cracked the code on that one here. He starts off with a Jungle Hollow here into a Thoughtseize, gets to see what Raph Levy's up to. Elvish Mystic, the only creature in play for Levy, and he sees there Palukronos, Whisperwood Elemental, a whole host of big fatties. It's pretty clear what Levy's up to, that being Red-Green Devotion, making lots of big monsters very, very fast. On the other side of things, though, the sort of plays that are going on for Del Moral Leon are a little bit more nuanced. He's got the likes of Den Protector, he's got the likes of sort of your standard good green-black cards, but then on top, this Demonic Pact plan is a very, very interesting one.
Yeah, his deck is actually filled with a number of ways to either reset or destroy his own Demonic Pact, and we won't necessarily spoil the surprise yet, but as this match pans out, hopefully we'll get to see the Demonic Pact come into play, and we'll see some of the cool tricks that his deck has for leveraging that card.
Another Jungle Hollow there for Antonio Del Moral Leon. His life total just quite happily sticking at 20 in spite of the 2 damage off Thoughtseize. Raph Levy, though, he's the one that's really getting the action going here. Committing more of the early permanents to the board. He's got an Elvish Mystic already, and that will mean that he can do plenty on the coming turns.
So Raph Levy with a pretty standard list of Red-Green Devotion here. He's off to the start he wants with an Elvish Mystic. It looks like he's lining up for a turn 3 Palukronos next turn.
Palukronos, I guess, got a little bit of extra traction in this standard format, perhaps to where it was a little bit before Magic Origins, because with Languish in the mix, suddenly having creatures with a toughness of 5, that much more important.
Yeah, and we've also seen a popularity of red decks this weekend, and Palukronos, again, with being a high toughness creature, is pretty effective against the burn suite that the red decks bring, and also that monstrosity ability is pretty good at sweeping away small weenie creatures and tokens.
Nissa Sage Animist there, able to... Oh, sorry, Nissa Vastwood Seer, we're not a Sage Animist just yet. Able to fetch a forest for Antonio Del Moral Leon. One of the cycle of Planeswalkers that have all seen a reasonable amount of standard play here. And the Vastwood Seer, in this case, just sort of greasing the wheels, making sure that everything works smoothly. It's going to take a little bit of time before her spark ignites and she gets to become a Planeswalker. So Raph Levy here trying to figure out, is now the time to look at deploying a Nykthos Shrine to Nyx. He's got the potential to get lots of mana very, very soon, and Palukronos obviously helping with that. 2 green mana pips there, which will be very relevant for Devotion.
And Levy did pick up a Dragon Lord Atarka there. His hand was looking sort of on the verge of getting low on gas, but Dragon Lord Atarka, a pretty awesome pickup for him there. Something really powerful to ramp into in the next couple turns.
Yeah, I mean, even with the Palukronos being knocked down here, ultimately all that Raphael Levy's looking to do is to get to a point in the game where he's got plenty of mana, at which point he can just start playing far, far more impactful cards than he sees on the other side of the board typically. I mean, especially with the likes of mono-red decks, card for card, Raph Levy just has more powerful cards. The downside of that is that some of them cost a lot. In this case, though, Del Moral Leon, he's got some pretty good late-game picks, too.
Yeah, his hand's actually pretty interesting here, and I said we weren't going to spoil too many surprises too early, but it looks like his draw steps have done that for us. You can see Invasive Species and Reclamation Sage both in his hand here. These are two of the cards that he uses to interact with Demonic Pact. Invasive Species can actually reset the pact by bouncing it back to your hand. You can replay it again and then get to choose the 3 favorable modes again after that. And Reclamation Sage either acting as a safety outlet to destroy your own Demonic Pact or just a nice tutor target with the Woodland Bellower that we see there to be a solution to artifacts and enchantments on the opponent's side of the board as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. When Woodland Bellower first got previewed, I think a lot of people were just looking at, well, I can fetch a green creature with a converted mana cost 3 or less. What's the biggest creature I can fetch? How much power can I put on the board for 6 mana? You know, you can fetch your Savage Knuckleblades and similar, and that's kind of exciting. But the things that Antonio Del Moral Leon's doing with this deck show that Woodland Bellower has a few more tricks up his sleeve.
Yeah, I like how he's actually using it as like more of a tutor target toolbox, where he can get utility creatures that can do a variety of different things. Courser of Crufix being a go-to value example, but then also being creative with interactions with Demonic Pact as well.
You played a 7th land, right?
So Levy's just confirming here that Nissa starts doing really clever stuff once you play your 7th land of the game. At the moment, Del Moral Leon not quite there, but only a couple of lands away. So Raph Levy here casting a relatively small Genesis Hydra, it must be said. I mean, considering some of the ones that can be cast in some turns. So it's going to be a 4/4 itself, and it's going to let Levy put one of those 4 permanents in play if it's not a land. But by the looks of things, a bit of a swing and a miss there for Raphael Levy. He had to find something comparatively cheap to put into play and did not do so.
Another Nissa.
And Levy left with 2 lands and Dragon Lord Atarka in hand. Or sorry, 1 land and Dragon Lord Atarka. It looks like she is able to come down next turn.
Yeah, Dragon Lord Atarka, certainly a very powerful addition to a lot of boards. In this particular case, though, it's not as punishing as it can be on some board states, though I'm sure that Raphael Levy won't be sad to just simply have a gigantic flyer. Another Pelucranos World Eater would also be a fairly welcome pickup. A couple of points of devotion, a big monster, the ability to potentially control the board. Wouldn't be surprised to see that one come down first and then let Dragon Lord Atarka clean up afterwards. And the Den Protector in Del Moral Leon's hand there sort of also indicating that he has got the option of doing some of the more traditional plays that we see from green-black decks. This deck doesn't need to go into Abzan to find its tricks, it's just straight green-black. In this case, picking up
Thoughtseize and recasting it, which is actually great for Del Moral Leon because his only other solution to creatures is Ultimate Price, which of course does not hit Dragon Lord Atarka. So actually a really, really, well, I shouldn't say lucky, well-planned or well-thought-out or fortunate timing for him there to get the Dragon Lord Atarka out of Raph Levy's hand.
Yeah, Raph Levy's not really been able to string too much together here. Just enough disruption from Del Moral Leon to be a problem. And in the meantime, he's getting creatures on the board such that there's not really good attacks that Levy can make. Here comes Pelucranos. Antonio Del Moral Leon, I think when he initially burst onto the scene winning the Pro Tour, there were some players that were sort of saying, who is this guy? Where's he come from? What's he done? Is this a sort of one spiked win? But he's really put together some performances since then to show that he is a very, very worthy competitor at the World Championship that will be happening in just a few weeks' time over at in Seattle. Double block here on Genesis Hydra. And a monstrous Pelucranos to make that double block relatively profitable for the Frenchman. So our first Woodland Beller of the game. Let's find out if there are any other naughty little 3-drops that Antonio Del Leon can find for this specific situation.
Yeah, one option is to get Courser of Crufix. Yeah, I was going to say, because if he does turn up a land on the top of his library here, that'll be the 7th land that transforms Nissa.
Yeah, Nissa not doing too much at this point as just a straightforward 2-2, but with that 7th land, she does now flip.
20.
On top of that, Antonio Del Marion does gain a life. That not necessarily the thing that he's most concerned about right now. He also gets a scry. One land doing an awful lot for him here.
And I'm actually starting to like this position for Del Leon. The Courser of Crufix is pretty difficult for Raph Levy's deck to answer. He really needs something like a gigantic Pelucranos activation or a Dragon Lord Atarka to deal with it. And in the meantime, it's just going to provide a just a wave of card advantage for Del Leon. And that's really the way his deck wants to play out, is he wants to grind out the opponent's resources and then eventually hit a Demonic Pact and start to refill on his own. And you can kind of see this with the cards he's played so far. Double Thoughtseizes with a Den Protector. He's got Woodland Bellower to leverage card advantage, Courser of Crufix. So all this kind of points toward a mid-speed, grindy type strategy that then refuels in the late game with things like Planeswalkers and Demonic Pact.
A quick update from one of our back tables, though. Michael Flores back at the Pro Tour. I think his last Pro Tour was Pro Tour Charleston, which was a very long time ago, playing against Jerry Thompson, also back after some time working at Wizards. The two of them are locked in combat, 1 win apiece. They're going to be going to a game 3 on the back tables, red aggro against another green-red devotion deck.
But a huge pickup here for Raph Levy. It looks like he's got See the Unwritten off the top. He does get to play this as Ferocious, so he can find 2 creatures out of the top 7.
Yeah, this the way that he can really get back in this game. He can put an awful lot of power on the board here, potentially do something very scary indeed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cards off the top. He gets to put 2 creatures from among them onto the battlefield. This is no collected company. They can be any creatures whatsoever.
And Dragon Lord Atarka probably being the one that he doesn't want, that Del Leon doesn't want to see. And it looks like there was a Dragon Lord Atarka there, as
and
well
a
as a
Whisperwood
Whisperwood Elemental. Wow, that is a devastating combination of creatures.
Yeah, that 20 points of life that Antonio Del Leon is on right now is not likely to last all too long. Between the 2 of those creatures, there's now a massive attack force for Raphael Levy. He's going to be able to take that 20 points and deal with it in short order.
Remember that Dragon Lord Atarka can divide its damage among not just creatures, but also Planeswalkers. And with Nissa at 1 loyalty, we're likely to see Nissa and either her 4/4 Elemental token or the Courser of Crufix be taken out by Dragon Lord Atarka, which is the start of a huge mounting offense from Raph Levy.
I mean, the Woodland Bellower is going to be able to block something on the ground, but it's not going to be able to do a huge amount about that Elder Dragon in the air. Yeah, Levy's still with another Whisperwood Elemental in hand. Quick to attack in there, getting the trade. Pelucranos and Woodland Bellower squaring off there, and the first Manifest token coming into play for Raphael Levy, potentially the first of quite a few. So there is another Nissa available for Del Leon now, and at this point, all of those Nissas he casts immediately finding a land, which mean that flipping Nissa is not particularly complicated. The second one potentially effectively quite a bit more powerful than the first. But worth noting that the token that Nissa makes is legendary, so this second Nissa, if it flips, is not going to be able to just pump out more 4/4s.
Right, I think he's going to have to go digging with the card draw ability here. He really needs to find a Hero's Downfall ASAP to deal with Dragon Lord Atarka, but then he still has his work cut out for him. Oh, is that a Languish off the top?
It appears to be a sad Crocodile, but potentially a sad Del Leon, because many of the creatures that Raphael Levy is playing with aren't too worried about Languish, at least on its own.
Right. And with Whisperwood Elemental on the battlefield, Raph Levy can actually turn any creatures that would die to Languish into Manifests instead.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's one of the attractions of playing Green Red Devotion full stop, that some of the key answers that other decks might have are just not necessarily as powerful when all of your creatures are these massive, massive monsters.
Yeah, and we've really seen Levy's deck actually go toe-to-toe in this mid-game attrition sort of matchup. Where Del Moral Leon is able to answer a few of his threats, but then things like Genesis Hydra and Whisperwood Elemental and See the Unwritten then actually generate card advantage for Raph Levy to counteract the one-for-one removal spells and things like Thoughtseize.
So the one face down in place currently for Raphael Levy is a Crucible of the Spirit Dragon. Not necessarily the most exciting of things to manifest, but you can't win them all. And Levy here just figuring out exactly how many creatures he wants to send into the red zone. Looks like it's just going to be the Dragon Lord Atarka and that Genesis Hydra. And we have a quick update from one of our other tables. Atarka red on the back table. Quite a different... We're not talking about the Dragon Atarka here. We're just talking about Atarka's command, along with an aggressive red deck. Has taken down Kyle Bogamus, Kyle's green-white Constellation deck. Pretty solid against some of the more burn-orientated red decks, but possibly having a bit of trouble with the sheer number of tokens that the Atarka red deck can pump out. 2-0 to the Swede, Christian Ahlström. More manifests there for Raphael Levy. And on our King of the Hill table, it seems like after Brian Gottlieb got his crown last round, he's already in a little bit of trouble. A game down against Yuki Matsumoto. Sidisi Whip against Abzan Rally there. The first Sidisi Whip I think we've had in the feature match area.
Looks like a Languish here.
And in the battle of the old timers, I suppose it is, Jerry Thompson, the victor over Michael Flores, both coming back to the Pro Tour for this one. It's Jerry Thompson, the victor there, 2-1, so he advances to 9-3. But this is still the first game here between Raphael Levy and Antonio Del Moral Leon. I kind of associate Antonio with playing quite quickly, but with this number of permanents involved, it doesn't make sense to try and do things too swiftly.
I'll use 2.
How much mana?
I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh yeah, 4. Sorry. 4 yeah. Sacrifice the manifest. I have 2 left. Right?
So Levy effectively digging here to hopefully try and find a manifest that's going to survive this Languish.
2 manifests. This guy does.
So just to clarify what's happening here, Whisperwood Elemental was sacrificed, which means that any face-up creature that dies this turn for Raph Levy turns into a manifest. So Raph just doing a couple sort of shenanigans there with turning up some of his manifests so that they are face-up so that he gets new manifests when they die. Perhaps digging for, something big like a Pelucranos to then turn up.
Yeah, Pelucranos versus invasive species, especially when backed up by Atarka. A good fight for Raph Levy's side of the team, for those cheering on the Frenchman. A little bit of counting in French there by Raph Levy. You know that you're in trouble when he starts counting, because chances are it means that shortly thereafter he's going to be attacking for an awful lot of points of damage, and he's certainly representing a fair amount right here.
Enough. 12. 12. Yes, should be 8. No. 8 and 8, 16. Not enough.
Not enough, says Raphael Levy. Carefully metering out how much he can do with the cards that he has in play and those couple in his hand. The Wooded Foothills that's face down, not necessarily too scary, but Whisperwood Elemental in his hand, pretty solid, and a big, big swing here.
Yeah, not much Del Moral Leon can really do against this. I think the window closed a couple turns ago. He really needs to find Hero's Downfall in combination with like Den Protector or something along those lines. And yeah, just really not coming together for him, seeing the embarrassing end of Invasive Species there without its partner Demonic Pact.
So no Demonic Pacts there. Raph Levy picks up the first game, and we're going to have a couple of messages.
Standard is the name of the game at Magic Origins Game Day. Put what you learned from watching the Pro Tour. Standard is the name of the game at Magic Origins Game Day. Put what you learned from watching the Pro Tour into action on August 8th and 9th at your local game store. Visit magic.wizards.com/game-day for more information. The battle for Zendikar is coming to PAX Prime, and the Eldrazi are taking over. Join us for a special 1-hour Battle for Zendikar preview show hosted by Ashley Birch and featuring the Wizards of the Coast R&D team as they pull back the curtain on Magic's most exciting fall release ever.
Hello and welcome back to round 12 of the feature matches here at the Pro Tour Magic Origins. We're going to have a quick look in on our last remaining match. 2 matches already completed, but Brian Gottlieb, King of the Hill, is up against Yuki Matsumoto. Gottlieb on the Abzan rally deck, but Matsumoto, the first player I've seen in the feature match area running Sidisi Whip.
Yeah, very interesting here. Sidisi Whip, it got a new tool, I think, in Jace, if players choose to play that. But really just kind of a deck from Standard Pass that I think is still totally reasonable here. Some really interesting plays involving Whip of Erebos plus the new double-sided Planeswalkers.
I mean, it's always nice that you kind of know there's a bit of a clue when you come to the King of the Hill table. All of these players on pretty fantastic records. Brian Gottlieb on 10-1. Yuki Matsumoto not quite there yet. He's on 9-2, but certainly that puts him in the absolute top echelons of players in the room, effectively at table 1. So just small little chip points of damage here going on from Brian Gottlieb at this point, but this is very much the build-up phases for Gottlieb. I mean, his Abzan rally deck, it kind of works on an exponential curve as he gradually gets more mana going on, gets more creatures in the graveyard. If he does happen to cast Rally the Righteous for 3, he can, Rally the Ancestors for 3, he can end up just creating a terrifying board position practically from nowhere.
And it looks like Gottlieb's off to a pretty good start here with Elvish Mystic into a pair of creatures here, including Liliana, Heretical Healer. That means that if any other creature on his side of the battlefield dies, he'll get a 2/2 zombie and transform Liliana. And a transform Liliana against a slower, more controlling deck can be pretty effective, as we're familiar with Liliana of the Veil, sort of plussing and making both players discard cards.
Yeah, I mean, I guess discarding cards not necessarily the end of the world for Matsumoto. He is a deck that gets to use his graveyard as well. But it seems to me like Brian Gottlieb here, he's the one that's been drawing Satyr Wayfinders. That a key 2-drop for both of these decks. And when one player's got a relatively well-stocked graveyard and the other one hasn't, that's almost as important as the board position itself. Sidisi Brood Tyrant here, the original Sidisi from Khan's Atarka. That's going to put some more cards in Matsumoto's graveyard and, of course, mean that when creatures do go to his graveyard from his library, he's going to be able to get zombie tokens. That a Japanese version of Sidisi, so he is going to require a bit of translation, Brian Gottlieb there. He's getting the English language card text just to make sure that he doesn't make any awkward strategic choices based on not knowing exactly how the card works. He finds out what it does and he says, you know what, that seems like a reasonable target for my removal. So Matsumoto, in spite of being in game up here, not in great shape for this second game, not really been able to string too much together here against our King of the Hill. So Brian Gottlieb here, he's got a relatively straightforward clock, and this one of the cool things about this version of the rally deck, aside from perhaps some of the more colorful versions, is that he can just be a beatdown deck. He can just play these creatures that are fine. They all get into the red zone with reasonable alacrity, and a second copy of Liliana here. Do you want to explain to us how that works in terms of getting the Planeswalker flip? Because it's a little bit unusual, right?
Yeah, so this is 2 copies of the same legendary creature on the battlefield. So one goes to the graveyard. That counts as it dying, which means the remaining copy will see it die and will transform and create a zombie. So Liliana actually transforming herself and creating a zombie out of herself.
She managed to find a way to ignite her own spark.
A little bit of an odd flavor situation there, but nonetheless pretty effective for Brian Gottlieb.
But it looks like if we just see in the corner there, our main match on camera is just kicking off. We'll see if we can jump back across now, because there's just been a thought seize from Antonio Del Moral Leon, and that means that we can see basically all of the action of what's going on for Raphael Levy from the get-go. He just had a mountain to start things off with, and the best card of his hand already taken away by Del Moral Leon, that card being a Whisperwood Elemental. Sylvan Caryatid there, the play on turn 2 for Raphael Levy. That the buy box promo version, special artwork, different foil there, and both of these players in kind of in a setup pattern here, not committing too much in the way of threats to the board. Just a Courser of Crufix there for Del Moral Leon, so he will be able to play lands from the top of his deck. And he can, of course, see one there ready for next turn.
So we didn't get to see a great look at Del Moral Leon's choices, options with Thoughtseize, but we do see that he did take Whisperwood Elemental rather than taking a mana accelerant. And that's often one of the interesting choices when you're up against these ramp decks. But it looks like with Del Moral Leon's plan to go into more of a mid-range attrition strategy, I like the fact that he took that resilient threat. And down comes Demonic Pact, actually, so we'll get to see this card in action. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, it's interesting. The first time I saw this card, there were two things that worried me about it. The first one, that line, you lose the game, certainly not something to ignore. The other one being that it takes a little bit of time to do anything at all. You cast it, it's not until your next upkeep that you get to do one of those abilities. It felt to me like it might be a little bit slow, but in this case, it kind of undoes all of the attacks that are coming from Raphael Levy this turn. He gets to swing in with Pelucranos, but I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Antonio Del Moral Leon choosing to drain Levy for 4, effectively just sort of swinging back and gaining the life that he lost from Pelucranos.
Yeah, it looks like he will have enough time this game to leverage some value out of Demonic Pact, so I'm curious to see what he ends up doing with it. For those wondering at home, that is a Nissa Vastwood Seer on the top of Del Moral Leon's library, revealed by Courser of Crufix, and a Courser coming down on Raph Levy's side of the table as well.
Now, the interesting thing for me is that it's going to require exactly the right mix of lands and spells for Del Moral Leon to be able to deal with his own Demonic Pact. At the point he cast it, he didn't necessarily have the mana that he would need to cast Woodland Bellower to get rid of it, though I suppose he did have the invasive species. I think one of the challenges to playing this deck, and I'm sure this is something that Antonio's practiced quite a bit, is knowing when to just go for it.
And the first ability of Demonic Pact used there was the deal 4 damage and gain 4 life to Courser of Crufix, denying Raphael Levy his card advantage engine and recouping some of the lost life to the Pelucranos.
So he won't be able to choose that next time, but a few good options left. I mean, I've seen Antonio in some cases fairly aggressively play, bounce, replay this, mainly for the burn ability or the drain ability. But in this case, it may be that he says, actually drawing extra cards is kind of fine too.
Yeah, based on the board state here, and I may be jumping ahead a little bit, I expect him to draw 2 cards, then make Raphael Levy discard 2 cards, and then probably reset it after that. The reason being he wants to wait as long as possible to make Raphael Levy discard 2 cards so that he gets hopefully two big non-land threats when that does happen.
Yeah, I mean, Raph Levy's draw this time, not necessarily the most explosive in terms of accelerants to put really big threats on the board. And the fact that Ugin has been revealed here for Del Moral Leon, not even necessarily a problem for him, because it means that Raphael Levy's kind of put in a bit of a tricky situation of does he want to deploy too much to the board because he knows there's a potential it could all just go away.
Right. If he deploys it, it could get swept away by Ugin or now the Crux of Fate that Del Moral Leon has drawn. And if he holds on to it, well, Demonic Pact is going to make him discard 2 cards eventually and maybe even get reset and do it again. So he's kind of in a bit of a vice here.
And there we did see the Crux of Fate, now meaning that we've got a relatively empty board, and an empty board, not a good sign for Raph Levy. He's on 3 lands, Del Moral Leon on 6. Even though there's a Sylvan Caryatid to follow up.
Here comes the 3rd mode of Demonic Pact. Discard 2 cards.
So now it's crunch time. It's time to deal with that Demonic Pact.
And here comes the Bellower. Probably going to see invasive species here.
The combo. When the combo has the nice side effect of getting you a 6-5 in play and a 3-3 in play, you got to feel pretty good about life, right?
Yeah, so that Woodland Bellower, not only did it stop him from losing the game, it gave him a 6-5 and a 3-3, as you said, Tim, and also will eventually give him 4 life, 4 damage, +2 cards and -2 cards for his opponent. And you can see Raphael Levy just scooping in the face of that.
Yeah, I mean, Marshall Sutcliffe talks a lot about value. If you can find a way of making it work, Demonic Pact is just one of the most value-intensive cards in Magic right now.
That's right. Even if you exclude the infinite value of not losing the game the following turn, the invasive species resetting it there.
Just the talk of infinite value, I'm sure, already has Marshall pricking up his ears. We can see him, though. He's watching our other game, which we're going to get a chance to have a look in on, that being our King of the Hill table. So this is Yuki Matsumoto up against Brian Gottlieb. We're in game 2 here, and Yuki Matsumoto up a game here. Couple of zombies in play for him, but an active Liliana in play for Brian Gottlieb. Has to be a pretty reasonable spot for Brian Gottlieb, we must assume. And this is still the game that we got a bit of a look in on earlier, so certainly some elements of this fairly familiar. The Whip of Erebos in play for Yuki Matsumoto, though, potentially meaning that his 6 life is actually kind of a little bit more. If he does get to attack, his creature's going to have lifelink. He can activate the Whip to get something back that then attacks and gains him some life. This game is not necessarily over. Yuki carefully considering, and he says, I'm going to come in.
Looks like a Torrent Elemental whipped back there.
Yeah, Torrent Elemental, one of the few creatures that can just break open any kind of board stall. It taps down all creatures when it attacks, and that meant that there was able to be a nice clean attack on Liliana there, taking her down, gaining Yuki Matsumoto a little bit of life, putting him to 11, a much more stable position to be in. How many creatures does Brian Gottlieb need here just to be able to make his Nantuko Husk lethal at this point? It can't be many.
That would be 5 other creatures, but he also needs to get it past that zombie token.
Gottlieb says, I'm fine with throwing away a Satyr Wayfinder to deal with one of your creatures, because at this point he's got the chokehold in. He just needs to hold on and make sure that Matsumoto isn't able to break out of it. Thoughtseize there, the pickup from Yuki Matsumoto. Effectively, Matsumoto's graveyard functioning almost as a second hand here. Now, one interesting interaction, I wonder if you can help me on this one, Ian. Mm-hmm. How does Whip of Erebos interact with Planeswalker, the new transformative Planeswalkers?
Great question. So Whip of Erebos brings a creature back from the graveyard and says, if I'm still in the battlefield at the end of the turn, or if I would go anywhere, exile me. The flip Planeswalkers actually, when they trigger their spark, so to speak, they exile themselves and then instruct you to bring them back to the battlefield. So because the Whip says, exile me if I would go anywhere but exile, and the Planeswalker says, well, I'm going to exile anyway, that all works out, and then the Planeswalker returns to the battlefield transformed. It's now a new object. The Whip doesn't remember it at all, so it actually gets to stay on the battlefield. And that's what we've seen here with Jace.
So an old dog with some new tricks here. The Whip of Erebos deck able to get a powerful Planeswalker in play very, very easily. Even with a big attack from Brian Gottlieb here, unable to kill off that Jace entirely. Though it must be noted that Brian Gottlieb declined an attack from the Nantuko Husk here, presumably because that was the creature that got minus power by Yuki Matsumoto's Planeswalker.
That's right.
Nearly enough lands in play to flip Nissa. If Nissa ends up having to come back at some point, she will be able to flip herself. Transform thanks to getting a 7 land in play. The funny thing, of course, about giving this Abzan Rally deck extra time is that it could just, at any point, I mean, I feel like when you've got cards in the graveyard and Atarka Husk in play, it's almost inevitable that if you happen to draw a Rally of the Ancestors, it's just all over.
That's right. The longer the game goes, the more value you're going to get from Rally of the Ancestors when you finally do draw it. So Yuki Matsumoto needs to be thinking about ending the game in a reasonable time frame. Otherwise, Brian Gottlieb will draw into a rally eventually.
Now, Levy and Del Moral Leon, they're just kicking off. I kind of want to see a little bit more of how this game goes out, though, if I'm honest, Ian. When we first jumped away from it, there was a lot of play still to happen. Now it feels like we're at a crunch point. Can Yuki Matsumoto string something together in the next turn or two? If not, we might just jump back to Antonio and Levy. Of course, the beauty of our live look-in is we can see a little bit of Levy and Del Moral Leon. If we see something super exciting, do not fret. We will jump in there.
That's right, Tim. I was going to say, I'll let you stay on this one for now, but if a Demonic Pact comes down, I'm going to want us to jump back to that other match.
All right, it's a deal. It's a pact, if you will.
Okay.
But without any creatures at all in play here for Yuki Matsumoto, he's going to have to do something big. He goes for the Thoughtseize, sees a Dark Betrayal there, an interesting addition, takes that one away. A Minister of Pain hanging around. The Minister, of course, not particularly exciting when Yuki Matsumoto doesn't have any creatures at all in play. Matsumoto there getting rid of Brian Gottlieb's graveyard. That one less thing to worry about.
16, 16? 15.
16, 15.
16, 15.
So Brian Gottlieb here saying, I don't quite know how I feel about how this is going. I'm going to just get stuck into the red zone wherever I can. And here we get to see that Planeswalker trick all over again. Nissa Sage Animist is going to be very quickly upon us because Whip of Erebos getting back Nissa. Nissa finds a land. That land gets played. 7 lands. Our second Planeswalker flip of the game. Now, in this case, immediately Yuki Matsumoto saying, I kind of want to have a 4-4 in play. I feel like I need a 4-4, and it's really hard to argue with him in this case. We can see over in our main match, Levy and Del Moral Leon currently still content to trade off 1-for-1, play land go. In the meantime, quite a lot more opponents on the board over here. Thoughtseize there for Del Moral Leon, taking one of Nissa and or See the Unwritten, both very powerful cards. Yuki Matsumoto back on 15 life here after what looked to be a very dangerous spot just a few turns away. But we're going to jump back to table A because I believe that we made a pact earlier on that if a certain other gentleman in the feature match area made a pact, we were going to focus in on it, and that's exactly what's happened. Antonio Del Moral Leon has exactly one non-land permanent in play, but that non-land permanent is Demonic Pact. 4 different options, one of them very bad, the other 3 frantically good. And now Raphael Levy has something to pause and think about. Quite tempting here to start off with the Mind Rot ability, I would imagine.
Yes. So just to catch everyone up, the previous turn, Del Moral Leon Thoughtseized Raphael Levy and saw See the Unwritten and Nissa and took the See the Unwritten. Looks like Raphael Levy is top-decked Whisperwood Elemental. And now the decision is what mode to use on the Pact. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a deal 4 damage to the Whisperwood Elemental, but we don't, of course, know what is in Del Moral Leon's hand. Aha, he goes for the Mind Rot type effect.
So Del Moral Leon now knows that Raphael Levy is living off the top of his deck. He's got an absolutely great hand here. Hero's Downfall to deal with threat in play, Read the Bones to restock, Course of Crufix to get him a bit of card advantage, get him some life, and he currently has 5 lands in play. If he gets to 6, that's Woodland Bellower. That will be enough to make sure that he's safe from his own Demonic Pact. plenty of action here for Antonio Del Moral Leon. Now, he's held up mana here. I guess that probably means that we're going to see a hero's downfall. And a quick update from our look in there. Yuki Matsumoto was able to gradually leverage his Whip of Erebos into a winning position. 2-0 to him. He will be our king on the hill next round, so we might get to see more of that deck. But in the meantime, Raphael Levy is going to have to work out how he's going to deal with one Pro Tour winner who has made a Demonic Pact.
So one minor note here is it looks to me like Del Moral Leon only has one forest and the rest are swamps and Urborgs. So a little bit of a question mark if he can come up with the second green mana. He does, of course, have Read the Bones and just benefited from a draw 2 from the Demonic Pact. So I think we'll see him put together that second green mana. In fact, I think I saw a Temple of Mystery. But it does give you a little sense of the sweats that can happen with this deck when sometimes you have to run out the Pact without a clean game plan of how to get rid of it just yet.
I mean, I guess 4 turns is quite a lot of turns, and there are a lot of ways of dealing with that Pact if he needs to, but double Pact. All right. So Antonio Del Moral Leon is writing some checks here. Let's see if he can cash them all. He's got his Temple of Mystery. He's got his second source of green mana. Now, as I understand it, that Temple, and indeed we saw a Temple of Silence in the last game, they're just there for the scry.
Yes, that does make sense, actually. The Temple of Mystery is off color. The blue, I don't believe, is used for anything.
I suppose
in
that
his own deck.
for Antonio's deck, because it's such an unusual deck, we call them a rogue deck that you don't necessarily see coming, those temples definitely help throw opponents off before they really get a feel for what this deck's doing.
That's right.
Now that we're in day 2 of the Pro Tour, it may be that word has kind of spread around. When you see a deck like this at the top tables, people take notice.
Raphael Levy thinking through how he can get out of this jam. Of course, from his perspective, there's always the small chance that Del Moral Leon can't answer one or both of his pacts, but he has to assume that that's not the case, and he needs to find his own way out of the jam. And wow, it looks like a top-decked See the Unwritten, one of the best possible cards you could draw here. He only gets to select one of the creatures because he doesn't have a creature with power 4 or greater, doesn't have the Ferocious, but still potential to get something quite powerful here.
Yeah, an interesting kind of similarity between this effect and something like Dig Through Time. Both ways you're looking at the top lots of cards of your deck.
And
but
I'm laughing a little bit
different,
here at this Reclamation Sage, actually. Sorry to interrupt you, but it's kind of silly in that Demonic Pact is a super powerful card when it gets going and you want to answer it, but on the other hand, Reclamation Sage is sort of answering your opponent's Pact before they would need to anyway. But I like what he did here, and he took out the younger of the 2 packs, the one that hadn't been used as much. Both to deny those extra uses of it, but also, again, just in case Del Moral Leon doesn't yet have a way to answer his Pact. But of course, we know he does.
He actually drew an invasive species this turn, so he had a couple of options. This way round, he gets to get more power on the board to potentially just end the game. But with the amount of lands he had, I suppose there could have been a temptation to bounce and replay a Pact.
Mm-hmm.
So Woodland Bellower doing its thing here. Such a cool combo, and all of a sudden 9 power on the board for Antonio Del Moral Leon. I'm a big fan of this deck. The more I see of it, the more I like it. And part of the reason I like it, it's a bad boy, it's edgy. You don't quite know what it's going to do next. And every now and again, it could cause trouble.
That's right. I think for those of us inside R&D, Demonic Pact was probably the #1 card. We were just hoping, fingers crossed, that someone would bring out at the Pro Tour. We didn't know quite what deck it might be used in. And this is certainly one of the cleverest shells I've seen the card employed in so far.
I mean, there's a lot of talk about the Future League where inside R&D you test out all sorts of different decks for Standard and many other formats. This exact interaction, did you guys see it?
Well, I don't want to give away too much, but we certainly played a lot with the card, and we explored a lot of different ways to sort of reuse it or deal with it, just because it is such a fun card. And it also, of course, went through a couple different versions along the way. So I'll leave some of that exploration to the folks at home. But trust me when I say this card is real, and if you're thinking about brewing with it, it's worth brewing with it, because it's a lot of fun, and it is very powerful as well.
And originally this one was one where the very first template for it came from one of the community card design.
That's right. This was one of the designs in contention with You Make the Card promotion that we ran a while back. And it wasn't the one that won at the time, but folks in R&D liked it so much that we decided to honor it by including it in this set in a slightly altered form. Again, it went through a couple iterations, but just the design of the card is super sweet. So kudos to the fellows that came up with that.
An absolutely perfect flavor match with Liliana's situation.
Yes.
And lo and behold, Raphael Levy finds himself on just 1 life in this tie game. It was looking close for a while, but Antonio Del Moral-Leon, he's done it again with his black-green Demonic Pact. He advances to 9-3, a nice position to be in. The 4th loss is going to sting for Raphael Levy. A tough, tough loss there, but he'll bounce back. He's just had so much Pro Tour experience.
Yeah, he's having a fantastic weekend, and yeah, if I had to count on someone, it would certainly be him.
But yeah, another great round of Magic. I'm very happy that we got a chance to see the Demonic Pact deck in the feature match area, but there's lots more news from around the floor. We're going to head over to the news desk so that we can find out exactly what's going around the whole tournament here at Pro Tour Magic Origins.
Thanks very much to the guys down there in the booth. 4 more rounds of standard action coming your way. Results coming in thick and fast. Kentaro Yamamoto 11-1 over Jo Larsson of Sweden 9-3. Larsson still in great shape to lock his World Magic Cup captaincy down. Pat Cox is at 10-2. Sam Black on the slide now. He's lost 2 in a row, 1 in limited. First match now back in constructed. Sam down to 9-3. Remember, he is tied for 2nd place in the Player of the Year race alongside Li Shichan. Looking out for his results as that scrolls through in front of me. Takahiro Fujimoto is at 10-2. Nathan Holiday 10-2. Defeating Hall of Famer Zvi Moshevitz. He falls to 9-3. But Mike Sigris, we've been telling you his name right the way through this weekend. He is piling his way into the Player of the Year race at 10-2. He has every chance now of making the top 8 with 4 rounds to go. Still needs 2 wins, 1 loss, and probably a draw. More than sufficient is our guess. We're currently predicting 12-4 will not get you in, but you never know with slots 7, 8, and 9 round about that mark. Shahar Shenhar is still alive. He's 9-3, the double world champion. Ken Yukihiro as well, 9-3. Rich Hone back on the winning track after a desolate limited morning for him. 8-3 goes to 9-3. Still looking for results coming in from Gottlieb there. You see, you look at Takahiro Fujimoto there, doing very nicely. Thank you. Lots of 9-2s there. And that is the shape of the tournament with 4 rounds to go. We're into extra time in the round. So that's where we are at the moment. More results and analysis in just a little bit. But we're back in constructed. That means it's deck tech time. And I'm delighted to welcome another Pro Tour finalist to the video wall. We've got Hall of Famer Randy Buehler, and he is waiting patiently with Kyle Bogomaz.